what boundaries are. They are limits, right? Boundaries are parameters.
You will clap back at auntie one time in a funny way. She will learn.
Physical, sexual boundaries, financial boundaries.
Yep. I'll have a joint account and one person like spends a G in a day on the TV. You want to talk about it. I will silently put boundaries on you and just switch up and just hope you get it.
Boundaries don't need to be communicated when there's a safety issue.
Yeah, that's just wild. You communicate a boundary and then they just like disrespect that. Yeah.
I am not responsible for everyone's feelings. Hey, beautiful people. I'm Tina Morales.
And I'm Kiera Johnson.
And welcome to the Stories That Shape Us podcast, where we dive deep into the stories that have shaped who we are and who we're becoming.
We are so thrilled to have you join us. We are here to engage openly in hard conversations around faith, identity, relationships, and so much more.
Yes. If you want to peek into the journeys of healing and becoming, then we invite you to listen in on the conversation and leave transformed. Get ready for thought-provoking conversation, a whole lot of heart, and join us on this journey through the stories that shape us. Welcome.
I messed it up. Sorry. I'm still messing with my phone.
You're good. Okay. I'll just leave it on so we don't have to.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Yes, girl. I love it.
And all year, like, it's just like, it's so thick and pretty.
We out here. Let our hair be.
Yes.
I'm cutting it also.
You said.
Next week.
Really? Mm-hmm. How many inches?
I don't know, but I like it shorter.
Okay.
I like shoulder length and then layers. So
I'm trying to be more full.
Yes! Oh my god, I see it!
Girl. We trying.
Welcome back.
Welcome.
Oh my goodness. Well, y'all, it is holiday season. It is, I like to also call it birthday season.
Hello.
December babies. We out here.
I love December babies.
Yes. I love it. So, all that to say, we're trying to figure out, like, okay, holiday season. We're also reading a lot about family dynamics. So what could we talk about?
Mm-hmm.
And what came to mind is just the beautiful, beautiful topic of boundaries.
Yes.
So, just to get us started, I just want to ask, like, when I say boundaries, or when you think about boundaries, well, but like, what did that even look like for you growing up? Did you have it?
I don't think I did. I don't know if I did in a way that they were like acknowledged much.
Sure.
It's definitely not something I practiced having or putting into place, I think, until my adult life.
Oh.
That's me. When I picture them, I picture like kind of hard lines in the sand. Like I envision a line and that person can't cross that line.
Yeah.
And it could be different lines depending on what it is, like money boundaries or relational boundaries or.
Yeah.
But definitely not something I've really done much with, I think, intentionally until like now, like last couple of years.
Yeah. I love that you said that because similar, right? I don't think I really knew about boundaries until, adult life.
Mm-hmm.
But how that is even so telling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and just like, I'm just thinking about that, like, as children, we didn't even know what they were, or even know that we had them or could or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially so growing up in a Hispanic household.
I was just about, that's what made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's like boundaries stop. Like, right. We didn't shut our doors. We were allowed to shut the door in the house. Like, and I think it's funny. I don't see an issue with that. But yeah. Boundaries is like, what does that even look like?
Right. Yeah. Physical, but I mean, Hispanic people, I love us. Yeah. Right. We are very loving and affectionate people. Right. Mm-hmm. So every single time we go somewhere, you're hugging and kissing everybody. It's always a kiss on the cheek, a hug, and you have to greet every single person when you walk into the room, and say goodbye to every single person as you leave.
Oh, wow.
All with a hug, all with a kiss.
Yeah.
And it was funny when I moved to the South, because I grew up in a very, there was a large Hispanic population, predominantly Puerto Rican and Dominican where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
in the city, not in the suburb that I grew up in, but in the city that I grew up in.
Yeah.
And so moving to the South, actually, maybe it started with college, but I just remember like meeting people and wanting to immediately hug and kiss them. And then learning like, wait, hold on, people have boundaries. And I was very confused by that because I was just like, oh, like, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, this is just how we greet each other. But how culturally even boundaries can look different. Mm-hmm. But I will say, now as an adult, I still love that form of greeting when it happens because it is so culturally ingrained. Mm-hmm. But I also respect, like, that's not how everyone greets each other.
Yep.
And knowing that that's okay.
Yep.
That it's okay for someone to say, no, I don't want to be touched or hugged or kissed or, whatever. All I'd say, it was just fascinating because I didn't have a choice.
No. Gotta go around, do what you gotta do. Yes. No, that's funny.
Yeah. So I just think that right there is a physical boundary that I just wasn't aware of.
Right.
And I like that you mentioned money boundaries.
Yeah.
What were some of the other ones you said?
I said money boundaries, like maybe like interfamilial boundaries, like when you marry into a family, like what are your boundaries now with the family you married into on both sides? Like how do y'all get down? Or interrelational boundaries, I don't know, in marriage. Again, I don't have all these defined myself, but I'm sure there are some like
you have mental, emotional boundaries.
Emotional,
physical, sexual boundaries, financial boundaries.
Yep.
All of it.
In every category, I think there can be boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never. It's been a newer practice as getting adult, and usually sometimes you don't think to do it until you've been hurt or crossed, or sometimes I find that they've come about more reactionary than having like proactive boundaries.
So it's almost like maybe you figure out you had a boundary when it gets crossed?
When it gets crossed, yeah. Like, this hasn't happened to us, but like if you're married and like, y'all have a joint account and one person like spends $1 in a day on the TV, y'all want to talk about it. I'm just saying you might not have thought to talk about it until,
that's true.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like.
Right. Like what's the boundary in terms of financial, like cap and spending even?
Cap and spending. Like, do we have to talk? When we agree to spend a certain amount, like, hey, if any one of us sees something over X amount of dollars, let's just call each other. Yeah. Let's plan it out. Buying it.
Yeah.
But it's like, I find that sometimes if you're proactive about boundaries, it can be a little brash, a little harsh, a little much.
What do you mean? Tell me more.
So it's like, if you come into a relationship, it's like, hey, sit down.
And that's how we're talking about it.
That is not what you do. You're like, hey, sit down. We need to talk. Like, we need to talk about what this thing is. And I just feel like, I don't know why I had to say it like that just now, but like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you're proactive about it, it can feel more maybe defensive or more, it can feel harsh.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a reason not to do it. Maybe it's just how you do it.
Yeah. Well, and even what you're saying, that could even be a perspective of what a boundary, like that could be the narrative of what boundaries are. Like boundaries are harsh if we communicate them, right? Yeah. So like maybe that's maybe a narrative, right? And so the idea is, oh, well, if I set these boundaries, it's gonna be problematic or harsh.
Yeah.
But I would say learning about that and growing in it, because I was not good at it before. Mm-hmm. And let's be clear, when I say I was not good at it, I think I was good at it with other people.
Yeah.
Not good at it with myself.
You mean you're good at respecting boundaries, or you're not good at having them?
Good at respecting them, but also having them with other people, but not with myself. Like I don't give myself a boundary. I don't give myself a limit. I don't say no to what I should be saying no to for myself. Right? Like a lot of times
we think about pleasing people. Like,
yeah. Like a lot of times when we think of boundaries, we think about the boundaries that we have to set with other people, and we don't think about the boundaries we have to set with ourselves.
Yeah.
So I told you my coping mechanism is I work harder.
Yeah.
Setting a boundary with myself is saying, no, you're going to stop at this point.
It's hard. That's hard. It's hard to set for yourself and then listen. Yeah. I'm going to listen to me. Like, it's hard.
Yes. Yeah.
I get that.
So just clearly in terms of like what boundaries are, they are limits, right? Boundaries are parameters. They're markers of where something begins and where something ends.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why there's all these different categories. We can talk about boundaries with finances, your physical body, your mental space, your spiritual space, like your sexual, like there are so many, we could be talking about boundaries in so many different areas.
Yeah.
Specifically though, recognizing that if we were to keep this with like family dynamics, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times, depending on like what your family dynamic is when it comes to boundaries, like I said, for me, there weren't really many clearly stated.
Yeah.
There were some that you found out when you crossed it.
Yeah.
Based off of, for example, certain things I just can't say to my mom.
Oh, yeah. No.
Right? Or, to your parents, like you just can't say it because you know you crossed a boundary.
Oh, yeah.
And then, that makes me think of like, what happens when you cross a boundary?
Yeah.
Like the relationship to that. So for me, when I crossed a boundary, it was scary.
Yeah.
Dangerous, right? I make that sound physical. It was not.
Yeah.
But it was more so just like the verbal, I'm going to put you in your place.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to be criticized.
Yeah.
And so
sometimes like they're never
recognizing that.
Like, yeah, I learned from older brothers. So I think I was a good kid because I watched
and
learned, and I didn't repeat those mistakes of like whatever talking back, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there weren't boundaries that were said with like, oh no, you got it after that first reaction.
Yeah.
I just did that. There was not a slap, but I got that. I got the hint. I got where that boundary is.
Yeah. The consequence of crossing the boundary was very clear, whether it was spoken or not.
Right. Oh, even like growing up, I remember very specific, and I think this is like not just unique to me, but there was like, you can't just ask why all the time.
Oh.
And I didn't know. I'm a little kid. I'm like, well, why? I don't think I did it like that, but I was like, why? And it's like, hey, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's a boundary. Like in that context, like I can't ask that. So you gotta like learn maybe as a kid more reactionary for sure. But in general, I think it can be more reactionary even in adult life.
And this kind of goes to the point of two of the questions that we were gonna ask.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick. Are you sick and tired of getting into the same fights with your partner over and over again? Are you sick of feeling misunderstood and disconnected? If so, I get it, which is why I created an ebook just for you. In Crushing Conflict, you're going to get a guide about how to get out of the chaos. You're going to learn why you keep getting stuck in the same cycle over and over again. You're going to learn how to get unstuck with several practical tools. And you're going to learn how you can create lasting change in your relationship. If that's you, I invite you to click the link in the description below and grab your copy today. I hope that blesses you. Two of the questions that we were going to ask.
Yeah.
Do boundaries need to be verbalized?
Yeah.
And, what was another question that we had asked? Do they need to be verbalized, and
can they be bad? Can boundaries be bad? Yeah. Yeah. Verbalize is tricky. I will silently put boundaries on you and just switch up and just hope you get it. So that's one thing I don't particularly always know how to do.
Okay.
Especially, it depends on if there's like so much sensitivity around them. Maybe that's avoiding conflict on my end, or just, like, how do I know? Do I need to tell you this, or do I just need to?
So to that question, a couple things. One, I would say it depends.
Yeah.
And in terms of what does it depend on, I would say, so for example, like our parents didn't communicate certain things, like you knew when you crossed it.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have known ahead of time. Right? So I think communicating a boundary is helpful when, one, maybe it's the first time. Two, it's maybe like like for example with children, it's like a form of teaching or like guidance and training up in a sense. But relationally, I think it is helpful to verbalize them. I think it's necessary because it does the relationship a disservice when it's not. It's all of a sudden like there's like, wait, what just happened?
Right.
There's change. But also, I think boundaries need to stop being communicated when you've already done it and the person's not respecting it.
Yeah, that's just wild. You communicate a boundary and then they just like disrespect that. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Right. And that's when now your boundary with yourself is move different.
Right.
Right. Change it up.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to do it.
Yeah.
That's a better way to do it. Putting a boundary in place that they aren't aware of that you now have, and then you move different, and then they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that makes sense."
Well, and then to your point, the other time where I think it's helpful to not communicate is if you already know that person's not safe, like a physical safety issue or even an emotional safety issue that is at an extreme. And I want to think of an example to give. If it comes, I will.
Yeah.
But I do think that some boundaries don't need to be communicated when there's a safety issue.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. Like, no, you just need to keep yourself safe.
Because you know what? We talked about that in a previous episode, like our relationship. I think it was honesty and conflict. And if you grow up not knowing how to do conflict in a healthy way, why, like when you set boundaries, you might be like, you set them, but they're unaware because that's how you're used to having to kind of navigate relationships. Yeah. It should, I think that makes sense, depend on whether that person is safe. Like if you're in a healthy, interdependent relationship where that person can receive well, then you're right. Like communicating should be done and they react in a healthy way. But you're right. If you're used to kind of trying to communicate those things and they lash out, then you're just going to obviously shift your ways. But not necessarily communicate. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I think, yes, in a healthy, mature, mutual relationship, I think go-to first is communication. And then from there, it's changed behavior. Yeah. I think a lot of times we communicate the boundary, hoping that they'll change the behavior. And then we just keep doing that cycle. Well, that was my boundary. Stop doing it. And then they do it again. Well, that was my boundary. Stop doing it. Stop talking about your boundary.
Right.
And act on it.
Right.
Like do what you have to do to respect your own boundary.
Right.
To model to them what it looks like to respect your boundary.
Yeah.
Ooh, girl.
That's good practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can they be bad?
I think that depends on intention with your boundary. I think if your intention is like you just want to control a person or you're angry, you want to prove a point, or anything with like more malintent, that where the boundary itself isn't for constructive or health of both parties. Yeah. I think they can be used poorly.
Yeah. Like that would be a manipulative form of boundary setting.
Right.
I'm doing this with and that's something that you can sense.
Right.
I don't think there's like a clear structure to be able to like, okay, well, this is exactly
which one's bad, which one's
But yes, like having the intention behind it, the motive behind it.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm trying to think of another way that it could be, a boundary could be bad. I I think when we use the word boundary, but really what we're doing is avoiding.
Yeah.
I think that can be not necessarily bad, but just it's unhelpful.
Yeah.
Because it can keep you stuck in isolation.
That too, and it's like, I think when you just avoid, you're not doing a relationship.
Yeah.
You're kind of just going to hurt the person when they just might not know. Like you said, culturally, everyone is different. Like your family might have got their family or their friend, they just might get down differently. And you're not giving them a chance to...
Right. This is where communication with them is so important.
I mean, you're not giving them a chance to know that something bothered you and put that in place and just not cross that anymore. It's like, it's not doing the relationship justice, probably.
Right. I'm curious with, like when you think about boundaries that you've maybe learned or have had to start to practice, with family, what are some of those and what would you say like makes it hard?
I think I'm still learning what some of those are, but even like last episode, we talked about a lot of like generational things and say there's like, say finance, you see financial patterns and like, you know, everyone's giving money here, not getting it back, all of these things. So maybe there's like, you know, boundaries you set in place, like, hey, you know, when someone in our family is in need, this is how we go about doing that. So in a way it helps them and doesn't hurt us.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that.
Oh, that's good.
We think through ahead of time because stuff happens. I think that's a big one. I would say that's probably like one of the main top ones that come to my mind.
Yeah. I like what you're saying though. It sounds like it's proactive, like it's a conversation ahead of time.
Yeah.
About how to navigate a boundary when it shows up.
Right.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, when you can. And then sometimes, it is reactive. Or like, I don't know, say you have a family member that talks crazy. Like, it's kind of like, those are the harder ones. Because then it's like you said, maybe that's not the safe one. So like, how do you, when you're dealing with another person and like, what is the boundary against stuff like that? I don't know. You're going to these family functions. You have like the clapbacks that like trend every year.
Ooh.
Right? It's like, I don't know what the boundary is against that. Those are the ones that like so many of us deal with. And it's like, I'm not sure what like, don't talk to me. Don't like, there's just a nuance in these relationships. And it's like, I don't know what the clear boundary is for everything, but the ones that we can be proactive about, we try.
Yeah. I think with stuff like that, right? Like, I think the thing to remember is we actually cannot dictate or control what someone says or does.
Right.
We can only control what we do.
Right.
So in that, like, for example, it's like the options, like what are the options that are present to have your boundary respected?
Right.
And I think some of them are, and this is what I think is fascinating. Some people would say, like, it's just like not even fathomable to do what I'm about to say. So like, someone, you know, you've communicated with them and they continue.
Right.
They continue to just talk to you the way that they do, especially family gatherings.
That's the main thing that comes to my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Holidays, family gatherings, someone's there. They're going to say what they're going to say. One, if that person feels safe enough or comfortable enough and you feel like you could talk to them and that they'd maybe listen, you try that. That doesn't work. Or let's just say you just don't even think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
Because you've had plenty of experience with this person. You know they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Having your boundary respected, because at the end of the day, that is intruding upon your mental and emotional space.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're not maybe intruding on you physically.
Right.
They're intruding on you mentally and emotionally. Mm-hmm. So how do you protect that space? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is, you don't put yourself in that situation.
Right. And you see more of that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I'm just not going to go to that thing.
Yeah.
And those are tough.
They are. And that's what I'm saying. Like, those are the ones that kind of seem unfathomable.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, like there's a way of kind of navigating that. Like you weigh the pros and the cons. Is this something, it's a one-time family gathering? Is it going to be, maybe you kind of work through in your head, well, this is like a one situation that I'm going to deal with. And then I know I'm going to,
right.
So I can manage that. Or it's like, yeah, maybe it is a one-time situation, but I know that it's going to take a toll on me mentally and emotionally.
Right.
So the con of, like, that's a con. It's like, do I want to have to navigate that?
Right.
And so there are so many things to kind of think about when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But you know for yourself what truly are the pros and the cons.
Right.
And then making a choice, because at that point, I think this is a part of our boundaries with ourselves.
Right.
Right? Like, what boundaries did I have for me?
Yeah. Like, am I going to continue to subject myself to the same thing over and over again the same way?
Right.
And back to the funny clapback examples. That's still kind of funny and special in its own way. Culturally, it's like you still want to engage. Yeah. And it's family, right? No family's perfect. Yeah. But in your own little way, you will clap back at auntie one time in a funny way. She will learn not to come for you again. So it's just like, I think there's a nuance to it sometimes.
Sure.
But the reason why the clapbacks are funny is because like you might have been raised in a culture where you don't say anything. You just take it. And that is a way of like humorously like, all right. And I think
I'm not doing that.
No. You won't get clapped back. We're gonna laugh at it, but I'm not just gonna take it. So it's like, I think there's beautiful ways, and cultural ways, and nuances to have boundaries and reactions. Yeah. But absolutely, if something's unhealthy, it's like you do have to make the tough choices.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you're saying, because boundaries don't have to be rigid.
Right. Yeah.
Because they don't have to be rigid. It depends on the severity of the context and of the situation. Right. So like boundaries can be fluid or flexible.
And that's why I like that. Because like, especially like I see a lot like in our generation, like, we're so quick to want to like cut everybody off kind of.
What is it?
And that's more sad. And I think in some instances it's called for, like you said, really unsafe or severe situations. But I think where you can have that flexibility and grace, but still those fluid boundaries to navigate, if overwhelmingly there's still love and a willingness there on both sides, I think that's really special.
Right. Yeah, definitely not making this black or white.
Yeah.
Getting comfortable with nuance and tension. I think that's important. I think there's something really important about like increasing your tolerance for tension while not while still having very clear boundaries.
Yes.
Like I think that's just it's necessary for growth. There was another thing about boundaries that I was going to ask about.
Did we touch how to communicate them?
Oh, how we communicate.
We talked about like whether to, but I guess like
how to.
Yeah.
Love this.
Yeah.
For me, what I would say, how to communicate boundaries. Directly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
And concisely.
Yeah.
They're
probably hard to do, but yeah.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But the 3 C's of it, clarity, conciseness, consideration.
Oh, okay. That's a good that's a good third one.
Again, in a healthy relationship, to be able to do that, saying, hey, this is my boundary, whatever it is. Being clear about it and being concise. The concise piece is important because a lot of times for people who maybe struggle with setting boundaries, they'll water it down or they'll over-explain it. They'll over-explain the boundary.
Yeah.
To try to justify it.
Yeah.
Not because it needs to be justified, but because you feel uncomfortable setting the boundary. You do not need to justify your boundary.
I like that's a gem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So be
especially
concise.
If you struggle with like people pleasing and stuff like that, you're gonna feel guilty when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. The guilt's gonna come.
Yeah.
I will say this. I was having a conversation with a family member of mine, And the truth about setting boundaries when I will talk about like when you're a people pleaser, or when you're used to being the caretaker, the one that everyone comes to, the person who's there and meets everybody's needs. Setting a boundary can feel like you are abandoning them. It can feel like
that's what it feels like to them. Yeah.
Yeah. But
and
to
yourself, that's where the guilt comes from.
It's a lot of guilt, because it's like, man, I'm abandoned. I know they need me.
Yeah.
Oh, girl. We were talking about the tension.
Yeah.
I know they need me. I know they need something. And I'm saying no to the need. Hello, Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus didn't meet everybody's needs.
Yeah.
But to be aware. Here's that ACE method. Be aware that that's going to come up. Understand where it's coming from. I'm feeling some guilt because I feel like I'm supposed to. Like, that's maybe my role.
Yeah.
But also understanding that, okay, how do I talk myself through this? Like, no, that's not my role.
Right.
I'm not responsible for everybody's needs. I'm not responsible for everybody's feelings.
Right.
I am not responsible for everyone's feelings.
Say it again.
Right. And it's okay if they are disappointed, upset with my boundaries.
Yeah. And you can communicate these things, like maybe not like when you're high on emotion, because it might come out all types of wild. And that's like the consideration part.
Yes.
So like, clear, concise, and like with consideration still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of times boundaries, but we're real bold with boundaries when our emotions high.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like we'll do all the things at that point.
I like that.
Yeah.
It bothers me when you do this. Can you not do this anymore?
Yeah. So good. Describe behavior, not the person.
Ooh, I didn't even do that on purpose. No, that's great. Yeah. It bothers me when you do this.
Yes.
Can you please stop?
Yeah. Versus it bothers me when you're such a jerk.
Yeah, because then you get, and then people start getting defensive, and it's,
No.
That's,
It bothers me when you interrupt me when I'm speaking.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be able to describe the facts that everybody else could see and say, yes, that happened.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Describe the facts. Keep your emotions managed, regulated. Very, very good. That's how you communicate them.
Yes. I love that.
Right?
That's nice.
Nice.
You'll have some good tools now.
Yes. End question. Well, anything else I was going to say? I have a question towards the end.
No, I think, we know when they can be bad. If they should communicate it, how? No. I think we hit the...
Yeah. So the end question.
Yeah.
I will say, this will be a self-reflection for us, but then also for y'all. What is a boundary that you would say you would need to improve on?
Ooh.
And what would be like a first step?
Oh, that I would need to improve on. Are we answering right now?
We are.
For me, I was going to say, I don't know if it's a boundary, it's the communication of them. Like in safe relationships, I need to be able to let you know. Whereas I just, like I said, I'll just new boundary, new me. Like, but I can't do that. I love it. So that's where I need to get better.
Oh, that's good. That's helpful. So for me, I communicate a lot. I would say for me, it's the enforcing of it, or like the
holding
the boundary. Yeah. Holding the boundary with myself of like, if I say that I'm not going to engage when someone talks to me a certain way, I need to not engage.
And stick to it.
That's good. No matter how tense and how uncomfortable it may feel for me.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Girl.
We're going to have y'all ready this holiday season, y'all.
Yes. So, reflect on that. What's a boundary that you might need to improve on? Or based off of what we just said, do you need to improve on communicating your boundary or sticking with your boundary?
Yes.
And give us feedback. We would love to hear how it goes for y'all.
Let us
Any
know.
questions? See y'all.